Greetings and God bless. I put this post up on my Facebook earlier today. Pretty simple statement. If they call you racist, just call them anti-white. Sometimes when I mention that racist is an anti-white slur, they'll laugh and wear that criticism like a badge of honour. They say being anti-white is good because whites deserve it. How would you battle against that? What would you say? Or would you say anything back? So again, sometimes when I mention that racist is an anti-white slur, they'll laugh and wear that criticism like a badge of honour. They say being anti-white is good because whites deserve it. How would you battle against that? Would you say anything back? My reply was, if they admit to being anti-white and are evil enough to think that is okay, move on, block them, etc. Don't waste any more time on them, bar to make some remarks about their evil nature so as to help onlookers more readily take your white positive side. So, this is a good question because it's educational. It allows me to talk on this matter and to delve into this. But there's a positive that this is educational, that there is inquiry into this type of understanding. But the bad news is, or the caveat is, that if folk are seeing clearly the world around themselves, the world that we currently live within, and if they are able to step beyond emotional bias, tribal mentality, and they're actually able to use reason and logic to actually rationally observe the reality before them, then they will start to see, they will start to understand that this question would not even be raised, it would not be asked, if there was that clarity of what is. Now, what am I saying here? Well, allow me to break this down further and get educational. So back to the good news. The bad news is there's a lack of education. There's a lack of awareness and understanding in this very important field of information or subject, this topic, regarding this topic. So that's the negative part, that's the bad news. But the good news is, well, that's an opportunity to learn and educate folk. So with every negative, there's always a positive if you look hard enough. So let us get to this positive. Fundamentally, anti-whites promote white erasure via the use of the anti-white narrative. Okay, so ideology or perspective of reality, so the way that a person thinks or feels that the world is, that's their ideology, their perspective, okay? Within ideologies, you can have moral frameworks or not. Some would argue that it's inevitable and you inherently have to have a moral framework, but there are those who would argue the philosophical notion of nihilism, etc., and that you could have some type of ideology or worldview which is absent and separate from some type of moral compass or guide. But that's a whole nother subject. Fundamentally, unless you're a nihilist claiming this type of thing, then you have an ideology, you have a perspective, or you have an idea, all right, a way of seeing the world around you, and you have an assumption, a concept of what the world is and how the world is and how it works, etc. That's your worldview, and that is your ideology. Now, an ideology is you could say, a well fleshed out and articulated collection of concepts which actually construct in a clear fashion that worldview so as to make it expressible, and understandable and shareable with others. So it's something that you can communicate and people can understand that. So you have a worldview, the way you see the world, when it's put into concepts and spoken about, and you can tell people about how you think the world is, and they can agree or disagree. That's your ideology, and their ideology, whether or not it matches or not. So we have our ideology. Now, due to the fact that there is a moral compass, so within our ideology, the way we see the world, we have a thing called good and bad, okay? So this means there's good guys and bad guys, or there's good and there's evil, or there's right and there's wrong. And for some people, they'll just call it pleasure and pain, and they try to make it as very, very autistic, and they try to drain the soul out of it and just make it a mathematical equation. Fair enough. But there's always some form of morality of what should and should not be done within an individual's ideology. Now, within the anti-white narrative, within this ideology of hate and bigotry of Western kind, which promotes white erasure and the destruction of our Western cultures, right, there are the ideas constructed around the moral frames regarding good and bad, okay? And within the anti-white narrative, all white people are bad and all non-white people are good. So, for example, like you have Christianity, right? Jesus is on the side of good. He is like God, represents good. And then you have Satan, devil, evil, right? Good and evil. In the anti-white narrative, the devil is white people. That's what evil is. That's the devil of the anti-white ideology and narrative. And then all of the non-white people and diversity and the destruction and harm of white people and their culture, that's the good. That's the God that they worship in this anti-white narrative. And the words such as racist or Nazi or white supremacist, etc. There's many different anti-white slurs and pretexts like this. Racist is the most common one we've all heard multiple times throughout our lifetime. These words, okay, so the words like racist are slurs, okay? They're the swear words. You know what a swear word is? When you insult somebody and you slander them or you call them a name, right? It's name calling, it's swearing at somebody. That's what racist is. But remember, we're in the anti-white narrative where the devil is white people. And everyone else is good people, or is good, the God that's worshipped, right? But white, devil, evil. But you can be a white ally if you kill yourself and destroy your own people, promote white erasure, destroy your own life and harm yourself and those or your relatives, etc. Harm your family, etc. You be anti-white, attack other white people, harm yourself for being white, abuse yourself and other white people, then they'll tolerate you a little bit and they won't call you racist. Okay? Because racist is the word, and again, these other slurs as well, they'll use multiple different ones. But this is a tag. Essentially, it's a tag, right? So, in their narrative, all white people are evil, white people are the devil, and then they call out the white people. They say, you are evil, you are the devil, now bow down, say sorry, give us everything you have, let us destroy you, and harm your children and take everything, because you harmed people in the past, slavery, etc. All these excuses. So now give us everything, white man, bow down and commit suicide. And if you don't, all right, if you don't give in, destroy everything that you love, harm all of your loved ones, harm your children, harm your civilization, destroy your own culture, all right? If you don't give up everything that your ancestors sacrificed and fought to protect, to pass on to you, then they'll throw the slur, racist, etc., whatever it is, because you won't give in to their commands, their demands of your self-destruction. So they throw this label at you, which means it's okay to kill you. You are the devil, you are a monster, a demon that needs to be cast back into hell. It's okay to kill you, punch a Nazi, etc. Let's hurt this white person because they won't submit and hurt themselves when we tell them to. So now we're going to throw a label onto them which paints them as the bad guy and means it's okay for everyone else to hurt them. And so this is how they hold power, all right? This is how they promote their tyranny, take away our rights, destroy our nations, and get away with it, okay? It all has to do with the moral compass. Now, fundamentally, why is this? Because, well, if you're slandered, all right, so in this same scenario, they've set up this narrative, and then they command you, as they say, evil white person, submit, destroy yourself, harm your loved ones and your race and your nations, or you're an evil racist, all right? And so people who are afraid, understandably, they'll submit, all right? People who are evil, understandably, they want to do evil things and harm innocent folk, so they'll be anti-white, they'll join in, because they're just evil, and the whole anti-white system is based in evil and harming innocent white people. And then the general masses of folk, all right, who just live their day-to-day lives, they might hear something, they might see something here and there, but they generally don't want to focus too much on politics and whatnot. But they see this like thing that, oh, and this person here who didn't want to join in with everybody else in this white erasure and this destruction of Western culture or the harm of white people in general, this person, they didn't want to join in that. Oh, but they're just a racist Nazi. So, okay, so we won't take them seriously, and we'll kind of just keep our heads down and just go along with the crowd. All right? So not only does it justify harm against this individual who refuses to harm themselves, it also then turns everyone else against them because they're the boogeyman. They're some bad supremacist, Nazi, whatever. They're a boogeyman, a monster. Essentially a demon. All right? They've been slandered and brandished as a demon or a witch. And then you have to have a witch hunt and, fire the racist. It's a witch. It's essentially the same thing. It's a witch hunt. She's a witch, burn her, burn her. And then everybody else in the town is like, burn the witch, Even though, and it's like a classic thing too, especially with like witches and stuff, hey? It's like the old fables. It's like some lady knows a bit of herbal medicine and somebody's child's dying, and everyone else is ignorant, and so she's like, I'm going to go give this kid some medicine and save this kid's life. And then everyone in the town's like, that was black magic. How'd you save the child? You summoned demons. She's a witch, kill her. And she's like, no, I just made some medicine. I was just trying to heal your kid. I just saved your kid's life. But everyone else is calling her a witch. So the parents, they tie her up and they set her on fire themselves. Even though that she just saved a kid's life. She just made some medicine and saved their bloody child's life. Those parents will string that lady up and set her on fire. So that hero will be set on fire and burnt alive as a witch because that's what she was slandered as by random people. And moral frameworks hold a lot of weight in folks' ideology, all right? The way they see the world, the way they interact with the world, etc. Essentially, you want to do away with evil and you want to uphold the good. So if you can make the good appear to be evil and the evil appear to be good, then you can make folk harm themselves and uphold the evil, which is harming them. So in this same way, if somebody is called a racist, a lot of the time, even people who will logically understand and agree with the person, they'll have some inkling within themselves and they'll feel like, oh, no, that person, they were called a racist, but they're a witch. Remember, they've been branded a witch. Even though I agree with them, I know they're right 100%. They're a good person. I know they're a decent person. They've never done nothing wrong. Never hurt nobody. But everybody in town called them a witch. So I better just go along with it. Otherwise, they might think I'm a witch as well. And then people start censoring themselves, biting their tongues, and everyone essentially has their tails between their legs and they become cowards. So that's fundamentally how the anti-white narrative works. Now, understanding this, all right, that fundamentally anti-whites only have power over us, and power at all, when working within their anti-white narrative with their concepts, all right? So, because this wouldn't work if there wasn't the stigmatization behind the concept that they created, racist, in order to brandish us and slander us as modern-day witches for witch hunts, all right? So that's one part of it. And then as well, there's all the other parts of it. How is it justified? All the other parts of the anti-white narrative. Oh, because of slavery, because of this. Because, white people, because of this excuse. So all of these excuses and stories and articles and lectures that are being pumped out of universities and just people making up nonsense, all right? Upholding the anti-white narrative, that gives it power, all right? Which essentially it's like electricity that plugs in and powers these appliances. So the word racist is like your toaster in your kitchen, all right? And for it to be plugged in and for it to work, it has to have power coming out of the socket, out of the wall, all right, when you plug it in. Now, the word racist, this toaster, can only be plugged in to the anti-white narrative. That's the only power source. If it's not plugged into the anti-white narrative, it has no power. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. All right? So, how do we get around this? How do we unplug it from the anti-white narrative? We have to unplug ourselves from the anti-white narrative. Okay? And then these things don't have any power, and they're absolutely useless. I can't even remember the last time somebody called me a racist. When I wasn't as clued on, I didn't understand these things as well a few years ago. People used to throw that slur at me all the time, throw racist at me. Now, nobody dares. They'll do it behind my back, or, they'll do it when nobody can hear them saying it. But nobody is going to stand in front of me anywhere, in public, in private, anywhere, and try to call me a racist. They know they can't. It doesn't work because it has no power. It's literally like it's not plugged in. You can't turn it on. It's impossible. Right? Why? How? Because I don't live in the anti-white narrative. So none of their concepts or ideas work when I'm around. They have no power. They're all turned off automatically. So that means the anti-whites have no power. They can't do nothing. All right? When I'm around. That's why they don't like me. And that's why they don't like me. That's why they censor me as well. They delete all my YouTube channels. Constantly having to regather thousands of, followers and stuff. They're always deleting all my social medias. Why? Because they know if I'm able to educate folk, more folk are able to actually step out of the anti-white narrative like myself, well, then they don't have power over anybody. They can't take any of our rights. They can't do squat. They only have power because we give it to them. But they're not having any of mine. I'll keep it for myself. And you can do the same. You can make these corrupt bastards have no power over you. You just have to have the wisdom to be able to do it. So, how do we do this? Well, in this case, when somebody's trying to call you a racist, all right? Fundamentally, somebody tries to call you a racist. This is an analogy I've used many times, and people seem to like this one, all right? The anti-white narrative is like a house. It's like a home, a structure. And then our narrative is our own structure, our own house. Now, if somebody calls you racist or anything like this, they're inviting you in to their anti-white narrative, into their home. They've opened their front door and they're saying, hey, come on in. Again, if you go in, then all of their anti-white slurs and everything, they have power there to use against you because you're in the anti-white narrative. But you don't have to go in. And if you don't go in, then they can't do anything. They're useless. They have no power at all. So we just have to learn to not enter when they invite us in. And then there's nothing the anti-whites can do. We recapture the destiny of our folk, our nations, our, Western kind will have a new renaissance, a second renaissance, a great awakening. It'll be more beautiful. Earth will be more beautiful than it ever has been before. The Renaissance was pretty nice, but Renaissance 2.0, it's coming, and it's going to be even better. You think the time of like Mozart and stuff was good? Whew. That's going to look like cave paintings to what we're going to be making soon. Literally. Like, Renaissance 2.0 is coming. Alright? And that's because we aren't going into their narrative. We're creating our own narrative, our own story. So they invite you in by these trying to, essentially any use of any terminology from the anti-white narrative is an invitation into their story, their narrative. So you don't go in, okay? How do you not go in? By flipping the table and establishing your narrative and inviting them into our narrative, our home, okay? If you say, yeah, so what, I'm a racist, haha, I don't care, right? Then you've walked into that home. You're inside their narrative. They have power. You've lost. You're useless. If you reject it and you try to say, oh, no, I'm not racist, you've walked into that home. You've accepted the invitation. You've lost. If you engage in any way whatsoever, right? So they're saying, you're racist, you're this, you're that, blah, blah. If you engage on their level, you've let them win, you've accepted the invitation, you've gone into their anti-white narrative where they have power and you're useless. So the only thing you can do is throw them an invitation. How do you do that? Well, you give them some terminology and ideology from our narrative. You say, racist is an anti-white slur. Everything I've gone over, everything I've explained, what the word racist is, how it's used, it's just a tag thrown onto people to slander white folk who won't harm themselves so as to justify harm against them. That's an invitation into our narrative. Now, what are they going to do? They can say, what? I'm not anti-white. Boom. We've won. They're in our narrative. We have power over them. They have no power. They can say, oh, I am anti-white. Ha ha. White people deserve it. What are you going to do? Boom. We've won. They've come in our narrative. They admit that they're evil and they are genocidal and they want to wipe out white people for having white skin and they want to harm it. So, remember this, and try to help others to learn about this and to understand this. Those who are beginning to go free of anti-whiteism and the anti-white narrative. Alright, because this level of detail and understanding probably be a bit much for somebody who's just starting to learn about these types of things. Be a bit confusing, maybe a bit too much all at once. But this is like the final destination, your final lesson, masterclass. Once you've touched your tippy toes in the water, then this is where you come swimming with the sharks, alright? Out past the flags, with the real adults. It's the most fundamental understanding to understand right now in this current age. There's nothing else as important as this right now on this planet, in this universe even. There's not much else happening in the universe as far as I'm aware about what's happening on Earth. But anyway, it's the most fundamental important thing, okay? You need to understand. Once you understand this, once this you have this epiphany, it clicks in your head, everything makes sense. All the political movements, every government on the planet, all the nations, everything that's happening in the world right now, all the world events, it all just clicks, it all fits in, all the pieces fall together, and it's like a perfect puzzle. It all makes perfect sense. Because you understand the actual story within which everybody's living from. The ideas which enforce their actions and their beliefs and their very perceptions of reality. And you can only think and do things in reality to the degree to which they are not limited or confined by your perception of reality. Therefore, your perception of reality determines what you do and who you are and how you think. All right? So if you can understand the narrative, the story that everyone's telling themselves inside their head, and how this story works and holds itself together, then you can understand the actions that come from it, which are everyone's actions. Because everybody who does anything is a person who exists within this history that we're living in right now, this same world. We're all living in the same world. We all, hearing the same English when English is heard, etc. When we look up at the moon, we all see the same moon. All right? So, if you understand the narrative, you understand why everyone's doing what they're doing. You understand the whole picture. It makes perfect sense. And that's why, too, you can understand how to change what everyone's doing. How to change the entire world. What people can and cannot think and do. You can literally change the potentiality of the thoughts that are capable of arising within an individual's mind if you can alter and manipulate the very perception that they use to manifest their understanding and their experience of their reality. Fundamentally, if you can tell a person what they see and they believe you and they're convinced, and you can convince a person what they see, and what that thing is that they see and who they are in relation to it, and what good and bad is, therefore what is preferable and what's not, then you control who they are, their vision of reality, and every single action and thought they have and produce. Pretty powerful stuff. You can literally change the entire planet and make everybody do what you want them to do and think what you want them to think. And it's really simple. You just got to change the story they live within. So there you go. Remember, if somebody calls you racist, you call them anti-white. You can leave it at that. It's simple enough. If they deny that they're anti-white, you've won. You and them are both within our narrative, where our perception of reality is the perception which is accepted. Therefore, it determines what people think, feel, and do. If they accept that they're anti-white, even better. So remember that. But remember, fundamentally, it's not about that. Don't miss the forest by focusing on the trees. See the individual trees, but see the forest as a whole at the same time. And understand that fundamentally, it's about the story which envelops the world and that everyone lives within, which determines where they're going. And that we just need to change the story, just change the timeline. Change what people think they are, what they tell themselves they are, what's right, what's wrong, what should and shouldn't be done, where they came from, and therefore where they're going. And then we just let them go in the right direction. So there you have it, folks. Sorry if it was a bit big-brained for some people. Try to make it as simple as possible. And, avoid scientific terminology and everything. But there you go. If you have any questions, hit me up. Happy to share this information with people. Because as I said, I volunteer my time to do this. Don't get paid. I actually get persecuted. Actually get fined. Not only do I not get paid as it voluntary work, I actually get fined. I actually get money taken off of me for doing this work. So I'm actually I get reverse paid for doing the most important work on the planet, which is understandable. And anybody who's ever done anything important, I'm sure they can appreciate that and understand that obviously it's the most important things which will be the least appreciated. And it's usually the least important things that are the most appreciated. And that's just part of life. So you just got to get used to it, I guess. Yeah. So happy to answer questions and whatnot, again, even though it's voluntary work, because it is the most important work. And anybody that knows me knows I've been saying since I was bloody 15 years old, I'd rather be homeless and just chill out in the park and not do any work than do meaningless work that's not going to actually, change the lives of billions of people for the better and make humanity generally better off. Actually be a hero and change the planet. If it's not that, then I couldn't be bothered. I'll just go sit in the park, and smell the flowers. I don't need money. I don't need a job. So, it makes sense that this is the type of work I do. the type of work that you get fined for doing, and that actually is the most important work and saves all of humanity. Somebody's got to do it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you don't get to take your bank account to the grave with you, but your glory and your honor is eternal. So my payment, my treasures, they're in heaven. They're not material treasures. They're in the spirit, in my soul. But goddamn, am I one of the most wealthy motherfuckers on this planet. I'll tell you that. Not physical wealth. I'm one of the brokest motherfuckers when it comes to physical wealth. But spiritual wealth, the wealth of the value of my soul, my virtue, my honor. It blocks out the sun. Right. It's a pile so high. Imagine a pile of gold. It just towers so high you can't even see the sun. It blocks out the whole sky. That's what my spiritual wealth is like. So it's worth it. Worth it in the long run. And if you want to have purpose and meaning in your life, step up. Be a hero. Because you can be. It might sound crazy, eh? In this day and age, we usually only hear about heroes in, Marvel movies or in our video games. But nah, there are real heroes. We still actually exist, and we actually are still changing the planet, fighting evil. And you can be a hero too, and make a world of a difference. You were born to be a hero. Or you were born to have that option. Ultimately, the choice is up to you. Take it easy. God bless.